I'm trying to tell you, my beard looked thick this episode. Over the last year and change, more than a few people, including yours truly, have seen the horrific scenes in Gaza and drawn more than one comparison to the war in Iraq. Both were campaigns initiated after a large flashpoint cultural attack, right, resulting long-term in a disproportionate amount of casualties between sides, backed by an us versus them kind of mentality for support. During a tenuous election season campaign where the left-leaning candidate advocated for a more centrist approach without direct opposition and ultimately lost the whole thing. Now, I should say, before I continue, Gaza did not lose Kamala Harris the 2024 election. If you look at the people who didn't vote for Kamala in certain counties or tried to vote for a third party, or even the effects of people who wanted to disengage parts of the voting electorate away from Kamala Harris, adding them to Harris's total in the swing states would not have netted her the 2024 election. However, it can be said from an optics-based push, a large amount of the momentum and unity was blunted because of the non-committal messaging. And that contributed not just towards pro-Palestinian activists, but towards independence as well, an image that was not separated enough from Joe Biden, which was a reason given by many swing voters. Now, does that justify voting for whatever the fuck it is we have now? No. Just like how watching kids getting bombed over and over again and being numb to it and conflating a politician or political parties or ruling government bodies' actions with the identity of an entire religion isn't justified. And that is not to say that Harris's words and identity didn't speak to some people, or that Harris would not have been better than Trump. Arguably, Harris would be a way better person in this position right now. But unfortunately, and because of her campaign's fault, to be honest, what happened. And the Democrats, for the most part, have spent the last few months soul searching, which again is normal. Also deflecting, which is also unfortunately normal. But what's frustrating about this whole situation within the culture right now is that it's kind of happened before. And as 2025 has gone on and more information and casualties and damagingly stupid fucking excuses for the deaths of journalists and civilians have come to the forefront, just like 2005, the traditional line of thinking and messaging propaganda has begun to fail. Many people at the time like to compare the war in Iraq to Vietnam, but man, comparisons between Gaza and Iraq are so incredibly spot on that not only should we have seen this coming, but we may be able to see what comes next. So let's talk about Gaza and Iraq, the comparisons between the two, how the tides are shifting now, and what it could mean for the future for stopping this and making sure it never happens again. Also, I think my standing desk is a little too high because I have to rest my arm on it. I kind of don't want to change it because I like the framing of this. Don't hate me. Let's start with the war in Iraq. I tend to assume a lot of people already know a ton about the history of this war because I'm presumptuous and stupid. So just to head that off at the pass, I'm going to go over a small little bit of cliff notes so everybody's caught up on what exactly fucking happened. After September 11, 2001, an enormous rally around the flag effect happened nationally that led to George W. Bush getting the highest approval rating in history, as well as declaring a global war on terror. And soon after, along with Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Condoleezza Rice, and Colin Powell, as well as a Congress who was super in support of defending American values and democracy and fighting terror wherever it needs to be, Bush launched a retaliatory effort against Afghanistan with Operation Enduring Freedom. The U.S. ended up invading Afghanistan along with UK and a bunch of other countries in support. Now, initially, the war was actually broadly popular around the political spectrum, right? With even some left-leaning publications like The Nation and The American Prospect saying it was more justified than the Gulf War back in the 90s. However, a lot of Green Party voters and more socialist groups said that the war would eventually lead to more civilian deaths and perpetual war. And at the time, the latter claim seemed a little bit more far-fetched because Vietnam was like such a fucking stain that was like culturally accepted at the time. Like, man, we really fucked up there. And the Gulf War ended super quickly in the 90s. We'd also gone through a period in the late 90s without an enormous like global explosion. So September 11th was seen as this incredibly shocking moment to most mainstream Americans. And the response here was seen as, like I said, warranted and justified. However, I'm going to move back a bit. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around so much. Shortly after the September 11th attacks, Rumsfeld and other members of the administration pushed to look into ties between al-Qaeda and Iraq. Iraq was the only country to actually praise the 9/11 attacks, and originally George W. Bush was looking for a possible state sponsor because of the sophistication of the September 11th attacks. But as they looked into the hypothetical connection between al-Qaeda and Iraq, multiple advisors told them that there was scant, if any, evidence linking al-Qaeda to Iraq. The only slight links were ways Iraq attempted to monitor al-Qaeda, not work with them. There was a point where Bush administration officials were handed a memo saying that there are huge gaps of evidence in the link between al-Qaeda and Iraq, and the advisor who gave that memo over was given it back and told, please update and resubmit this. Okay, I wonder if we're fucking fishing around for something here. As the public began to gain knowledge of all of this, small signals that the administration was going to go into Iraq like a completely fucked up, fabricated and planted story in the New York Times, alarm bells slowly started to go off. Many liberal and more left-leaning commentators started to go, wait, what the fuck are we doing? The big question about U.S. interventionism, imperialism, and even participation in nation building was now on the table. Many people feeling that Afghanistan was the culprit. Why are we even going into Iraq at all? You may notice that I'm saying Iraq and Afghanistan interchangeably with Afghanistan and Iraq. That's just because sometimes when I say Pakistan, people don't know that I'm from Pakistan. It's fucking weird. I'm brown. If you were wondering what the justification is for going into Iraq, well, it was WMDs. That's where shit started to get fucking crazy, right? An enormous push, like propagandized push towards the idea that Iraq actually had weapons of mass destruction that it planned and was capable of using on the United States just started to flood the media from the Bush administration. There was also the anthrax scare. Not too long after September 11th, 2 senators reported being sent white powder that some believed to be anthrax. That was an enormous, like, fear and just giant panic event for a lot of the United States. Average people going like, oh, we could just open up our mail and anthrax could be there. And all of the fear mongering and talking points and fucking patriotic symbolism and all that culminated with an infamous hearing with Colin Powell towards the United Nations Security Council, where he alleged that the United States had dead to rights intelligence that Iraq was 100% carrying weapons of mass destruction, and that they were working directly with al-Qaeda to sponsor terrorism around the world. This was seen in the United States political world as like proof, and to Europe as a fucking lie, which it was. France even criticized the US plans for the invasion of Iraq, which led to freedom fries. Do you guys remember freedom fries? The dumbest fuck branding exercise because the fries are actually from Belgium. Rest in peace to Robin Williams, who's the only reason I know that fact. However, this hearing was responsible for getting the authorized use of military force to invade Iraq. And the United States finally did so on March 20th, 2003, with the shock and awe. Eventually, 150,000 U.S. troops touched ground alongside 400,000 coalition troops from places like the UK and Poland, dubbed the Coalition of the Willing, who I guess got to keep their names on their fucking food. What a privilege. There were supposed to be 8 objectives on this whole mission, right? End Saddam Hussein's regime, find and destroy the weapons of mass destruction, eliminate and drive out any terrorist threats, find information on any other terror networks located within Iraq, find intelligence on any other weapons of mass destruction, and finally, end sanctions and deliver humanitarian aid, secure Iraq's oil fields, that seems kind of important, and help the Iraqis eventually set up their own democracy and elections. Very early on, there was very heavy bombardment. Like I said, shock and awe, followed by the troop deployment, and then Saddam's regime ended up collapsing very, very quickly after the invasion began. However, whoopsies, no weapons. Oops, what a, damn. That's kind of crazy, right? Just thousands of civilian deaths and bombings within the first 2 or 3 months before mission accomplished. After which Bush kind of came out on an aircraft carrier and he was like, hey, we fucking did it. The war is over. Completely done. We won. All is good. And it's just smiles and rainbows from now on. totally what happened. Almost immediately after Bush's little speech, there were multiple fuck-ups within the administration in handling this war. There was the de-Baathification order meant to prohibit anybody from Saddam's Ba'ath Party from participating in the government, which ended up gutting Iraq's civil service, schools, and infrastructure. They disbanded the Iraqi army, almost immediately lost all public trust, and then the insurgency started. Guerrilla attacks from multiple different factions, including Al-Qaeda, eventually leading to more sectarian violence, and that prompted the US troops to get more aggressive, kill more civilians, which made the insurgency get worse. By the time they captured Saddam in December of 2003, it was a symbolic victory at best that actually didn't make shit better. In Fallujah, some US Marines ended up killing some civilians, making all hell break loose in that region. It became a hotbed of resistance, and anti-US sentiment spread. All while Bush kept on the same fucking talking point line: we'll be greeted as liberators. We're doing the good work, bringing democracy to everybody, like the fucking Helldivers. And let's say you saw the forest for the trees at the time, with the tens of thousands of civilian casualties killed in bombings, with pictures and super fucking digitized 2004 video coming out, and you were like, man, this war is really bad. It feels like Vietnam all over again. Because why are we here? Well, why do you fucking hate America so much, you bitch? Damn. If you oppose the war in any shape or fucking form, you are criticizing a president during wartime. And by doing that, the terrorists win. You want another 9/11? Huh? You have sympathy for the people who killed us? Huh? Are you really a fucking American? Whose side are you on? You don't love America. You fucking hate it. You want us all to die. You want car bombings and planes flown into buildings. And by the way, fuck the Dixie Chicks. We're going to destroy their career. How fucking dare they? This got so fucking bad. Like, I can't. So bad. Right? You think the rampant, any criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism was bad? Imagine that. It's the same level, but no logical community of pushback on fucking any of it. No political power to actually like hold court. The blackballing was worse. There was violence against Muslims and Islamophobic attacks that were completely excused. Tons of jokes about how all Muslims and Arabs are fucking savages who were dancing around during 9/11, with a lot of Muslims opting to not tell anybody about where they're from, while their beliefs were completely lied upon the whole time. And just for reference, I was told not to tell anybody I was Muslim by my parents for fear that I was going to get jumped. And I did get people who fucked with me and started shit because I was Muslim or just because I was brown. I had a lot of crazy shit said to me those years. A lot of weird fucking stares. And in 2004, faced with that, a larger chorus started to finally call bullshit. For example, even in mainstream media, Eminem called out the Bush administration on the Eminem show. Michael Moore made Fahrenheit 9/11 and called out Bush directly at the Oscars. Sean Penn was fucking Sean Penn. This is just a lot, dude. And within the news media, The Daily Show became this popular voice of dissent, while Bill O'Reilly became the biggest name in fucking everything. But even with that growing opposition, it wasn't enough because the war was still broadly popular, with the narratives that the US is under attack from terrorism and illegal immigration. And again, if you really love America and have any sort of patriotism in you, you will support the troops giving their lives to make sure you get yours. It was seen as deeply immoral to spit on that sacrifice, or that you were endangering other people you live with if you didn't just tacitly support all of this fucking shit. And when faced with this lie and gaslighting, John Kerry, who had a lot of his party, a very strong contingent of his party, very critical of this war and the lie and this gaslighting, John Kerry decided, this is bad, but we can make it better. he middled his response to the war. He didn't oppose Iraq like people were fucking begging him to. And after he lost the fucking election with his very blank message, when 2005 rolled around, reality started to set in. U.S. troop deaths surpassed 2,000, and sectarian violence and massive reports of civilian casualties, which were now becoming more widespread, made Iraq look truly unstable. The news also started to fucking report on this shit. Thanks, guys. More specific images and far more reporting of the damage that was going on there. Bush was also facing more pushback from his increasingly authoritarian policies at home, like mass surveillance and constantly proclaiming executive privilege over fucking everything as he tried to fight other branches of the government. And Hurricane Katrina cemented a turn in George Bush's support because of his mishandling of it. By mid-2005, for the first time, a majority of Americans said that the war was a mistake. And in January of 2006, the bombing of the Al-Aqsa Mosque triggered a sectarian civil war. By mid-2006, there were over 2,500 U.S. and coalition deaths and 45,000 civilian Iraqi deaths, with 14,000 being killed in the first half of 2006, as estimated by the United Nations. We were the imperialist country and not the good guys from World War II anymore. We were back to being the dickheads who did Vietnam. We always were, but to the broader public, it was just a small snafu. Now, this was us. Fox News held 10 toes down even after Bush lost the White House, and even when there was a different president during wartime who they now got to criticize suddenly. But it took 3 years and 45,000 deaths before the broader public started to give a fuck. And that was because there was so much propaganda about the US and the world and terrorism built to block people from believing something was so fucked up, with threats to their livelihoods and their social standing intertwined. And when it finally broke, it was like a dam bursting, with politicians flip-flopping to, oh, no, wait. Actually, it was a bad idea completely, but it was a good idea at the time. I just, I thought I'd get votes. And Bushism lost all of its steam and credibility. So what does that have to do with Gaza, and how does it compare? Before I tell you that, I'm going to preface. Israel and Palestine's history is quite different from the US and Iraq's. I'm not blind. I understand this. The Nakba, the arguments about ancient lands, relocations, settlements, all of that is significantly different from the United States and Iraq. But the circumstances and place they occupy within cultural society and the discussions around American politics are very, very similar. For example, the claims that Hamas is hiding in the tunnels and it's Hamas's fault when people die from a hospital bombing. Well, if we don't fight them this way, then the terrorists win and they get a stronger foothold on Iraq. FYI, the US also frequently bombed and raided hospitals in Iraq. Israeli citizens have also criticized this as a forever war. Netanyahu has also increased his authoritarian control of the Israeli government. There are a lot of parallels. Frequently, October 7th and the casualties from that are invoked like the casualties of 9/11. Not to mention the frequent calls of anti-Semitism whenever you're criticizing specifically the bombing campaign, even more so than the us versus them thing, right? During the Iraq War, there were some on the religious right who really saw this as a huge metaphoric crusade. Like, I mean, literal crusades. The crusades kept getting brought up during this time. Fucking Frank Miller did a giant book where fake Batman kills a bunch of Muslims, who, by the way, are all clearly secretly terrorists, because that's all we are. We're all fucking sleeper agents, according to Frank there. He later apologized. I'll add in this. I went to a community college political science class because at the time I was like, well, I'm going to take this class. And I had this old ass guy who was my fucking professor. I'm not going to name him because his name is all over the internet. And at one point in the middle of the class, he goes like, well, people say that Muslims and Christians are similar. Well, Christians don't go into a mosque and bomb and kill 100 people. And then at one point he got in my face and said, your religion is wrong. Fuck you, Ken. I'm not going to say your last name. You know who you are if you're still around. But just as any semblance of Muslim identity was seen as capitulation with terrorism, today, any semblance of Palestinian identity, like the kufiya, is seen as anti-Semitism. There's clips online on TikTok of a girl wearing just a kufiya in like a hotel, and they're saying like, you know that this is actually like hatred towards Jews. It's a fucking cultural symbol of just these people. Like, it's just a fucking scarf. That's their culture for existing. For the longest time, America has conflated Zionism with Judaism, like it did unwavering support for all U.S. actions with patriotism. Until a little after its election. During 2024, skepticism over Israel's actions increased, with multiple people wanting a ceasefire. This was actually a big deal because before that, there was just a ton of time where Israel just had unwavering support from the broader US public. And according to polling, a majority of people wanted Israel to take it easy, but still supported giving them weapons throughout 2024, even though you could see certain things bubbling up during multiple points. However, as of this year, the opinion has flipped. Now, half of US voters think Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. That verbiage is a big fucking deal. The Democratic Party has lost major primaries to people who have been hypercritical of Israel, and a majority of Americans disapprove of the US's current alliance with Israel. In this case, we're the UK and they're the United States. However, also, we're the US and they're Israel, which means we could stop the fucking funding and that shit tomorrow. But even still, the shift here cannot be overstated. I mentioned earlier in the year that the Democrats had to find some soul searching. This is the process of it. Multiple reports are saying that the Democrats have to shift their stance on Israel. They are politically backwards right now. And as more centrist third-way sorts of candidates try to jockey for the old way of doing things, they're going to have to face the repercussions on what they have said before as they inevitably try to shift to adopt whatever things are going to get them votes. Hillary Clinton was the favorite going into 2008, and she lost because she voted yes on Iraq, even though she criticized it during her primary campaign. When Obama was one of the few who outright said, fuck that shit. Does that mean that the genocide in Gaza is going to stop tomorrow? No. Unfortunately, I wish I could tell you it would. We are in a moment of time that is a repeat of another moment where it took for fucking ever for people to get the message. There are a few things that will come out of this though. Number one, the shift here was instantly much faster. It took months for people to start crying foul, not years. That indicates the broader public is catching on to these things, and the next time something happens like this, the timeline will once again be reduced, hopefully to nothing. Number two, Trump is a worse politician than Bush, and Netanyahu and the IDF's narratives have been particularly terrible and lazy. It's just Democrats suck at their job right now. However, that means that long term, Israel's long-standing narratives and stop blocks that they've used for years to shirk responsibility of this no longer apply. People are able to separate the actions of a government with the majority religion of that country. The Israeli government standing in the world after all of this will be severely diminished. And if you're going to defend Israel, you should know that Israeli society also disagrees with you to some extent. 74% of Israelis back a war-ending deal where the hostages are freed. Many of them feel Netanyahu's handling of this war has been bad. Also keep in mind, every time you defend that fucking guy or you defend these actions, you should know you were defending him attempting to gut the judiciary and get away from his fucking corruption trial. If you love Israeli citizens so much, that's also fucking hurting them. Number three, and Mario, please put this up in big fucking red letters really quickly. Before I say this, I am not defending Democrats for capitulating to this narrative. And no, I am not a secret fucking Biden lib in disguise. What the fuck? I'm not those things. Number three, Democrats will shift on this because they're selfish, all right? You keep thinking of politicians as ideological. Some of them are just actors who really want to fucking gig. So if the people who just want to keep their jobs or get more visibility see the tide in Gaza shift, they will shift with it. The reason it seems painfully slow right now is a lot of these old motherfuckers move like they do in their walkers. It was the same in 06, right? And I'm not going to personally look at politicians for moral acuity, even the ones I agree with. I take everything they say with a grain of salt. Just like the Taylor Lorenz article. No, stop. Okay, stop. God damn, guys. But when that shift or pivot happens, as obvious as the disingenuity is, I personally don't give a fuck. I want to push the fact that there needs to be a ceasefire and this shit needs to fucking end. I want to get it to where we identify genocides instantly and stop them before they even get to this point. I've said this before. This is not about electoralism or Marxist theory or fucking patriotism. This is about changing the culture around us. I don't give a fuck about all of that, right? I'm really mad when people say shit like, well, liberals will hand you a ballot. Leftists will hand you a book. What the fuck? Both of them, what the fuck does that matter? Both of those don't mean anything if you have a broken culture, right? None of that shit stops Palestinian kids from starving until you change the fact that we've been accepting bullshit narratives for so fucking long without seeing the reality in front of us. Actions speak louder than theory. That's why I admire people on TikTok who do those GoFundMes and journalists who risk their lives for all this shit. The people who will lose their career, who will risk getting bombed in a World Central Kitchen truck, all of them. Propaganda and narratives are a sickness that is widespread. We are always under them. And you think now, because you were awake to Gaza, you've seen the world as it always will be. I hate to fucking tell you, but like in 5 years, you'll probably find something you're behind the fucking curve on. And that's not to say, why are you acting so morally pure all the time? I am not saying that. I'm saying the goal of all of us should be to act like we are not immune to capitulating in a broken system we want to fix. Because the second we act like we're just fucking perfect and we're immune to it, all right? People fucking suffer. The goal is to make sure that the next time this shit happens, because it will happen again, to make sure that the narratives and the bullshit and the propaganda don't hold up. It becomes about how do people die less and how do we fix the blind spots. The shift in Gaza is thankfully real. That's great news and incredibly important for the future. I just wish it would have happened sooner. Let me know what you think in the comments. And that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. This will probably be a long video. We'll see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Be back on Sunday with Freestyle, the news that I'm already working on our next episode of Griff Watch. My name is Tabani. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all soon. Let's go.